12. Reclaiming Bucephalus. October 3rd, 1986. Rockwood, Tennessee. Half moon. 3 days passed quickly while the two teens made arrangements for another vacation. Arriving back at Scold's barn, they noticed a warm, moist heaviness in the air. "Feels like rain is coming," Kenneth remarked as he exited his blue car. "Roll your window up so my seats don't get wet. I'll go look for Lady Fate." Kenneth found Scold cleaning the barn floor. Mary Lou followed right behind him. "The Spear of Chaos. Do you know where it is?" Scold inquired. "We left the spear with Diane a few days ago," Mary Lou told her. "I also called Diane and left a message on her answer machine to be on the lookout for trouble. Coyote is at the rehab center, I believe." "It is best served with all of you guarding it, but you would not be able to take it with you," Scold said. "You will have to trust them to do their job while you do yours." "Which is what?" Kenneth asked. "We are here on faith, but I'd like to know what I'm getting into." Scold responded, "We ride the wild hunt tonight. We will follow the hounds. Once they are put on the scent of something, they cannot be deterred by earth, by air, or by space. Nothing can escape them. They are elemental creatures of magic. Whether the Spear of Destiny is here or there or anywhere, they will lead us there if it still exists. But, as you already observed, we powers cannot take it, nor use it ourselves. It is for mortal hands, but to one that must prove worthy. Once you have it, then you will have to fight the forces of darkness to keep it." Kenneth stood and stared at her. "I'm supposed to ride? I don't exactly have a horse, and the only two here are taken." "Yes, and not exactly," Scold said, shaking her head. "Give it a bit. We are waiting for the others to arrive. Come, let's go outside. I need to get this process rolling. The light is shifting toward afternoon, and we need plenty of cover to pass unnoticed by ordinary mortals." Curious, Kenneth and Mary Lou watched as she returned from the tack room with a ram's horn and followed Scold outside. For several moments she stared at the tops of the mountains to the west. Scold then raised the hunting horn shofar and held it to her lips. She first blew one long, airy note, followed by 3 short notes, and ended with a long note that seemed to gather in the air, increasing the wind. As the wind rose to blow their hair, the teens could see clouds begin to appear over the top of the mountains. Quickly the light dimmed with the gathering storm. A vast serpentine shape slipped through the mist in a shimmer of light on dark, momentarily seen before disappearing. "Aranel will help drive the storm." Scold smiled in satisfaction. "The storm dragon seems to like the two of you. They will help us as they may." As large drops of water began to fall from the sky, they returned to the barn, where Scold started the process of removing tack from the tack room. "Here, Kenneth, carry this one." Scold handed him a black saddle and purple saddle pad. "You can put it over there on the racks by the back wall. It looks as though it should fit you." "There's no horn on it," Kenneth observed. He looked at it sourly, but took it and hung it where Scold indicated. "You won't need one, warrior," Scold replied. "A bridle?" Kenneth asked dubiously. "You won't need that, either," she said with a small smile. Kenneth plopped down on a couple of bales of hay stacked beside the rack. "So there's no steering on this horse I'm supposed to ride?" "Oh, great. I'm not the horse person," Kenneth said. "I don't even like to ride horses. Mary Lou is the horse person. Where's her saddle?" Scold just laughed at him without answering and returned to the tack room. She returned carrying an armful of folded, shimmering fabric. "This is for her, should she decide that she wishes to take it." "Why do I suddenly get a bad feeling about this?" Kenneth looked at the material suspiciously. He knew what Scold held. Nothing from your loom is ever simple. Perhaps, perhaps not, Skuld said. It is still your choice and hers. Lady Skuld, what is that? Mary Lou felt oddly drawn to the fold of cloth. She found herself wanting to see and touch the material. Your past and your future, should you take it. Skuld looked into her eyes and gently told her. You will not be able to speak with words, but you will still be yourself. Skuld held the material out. This is the only way you can retrieve the Spear of Destiny. It will not be pleasant, nor easy. You will have to trust Kenneth to lead you and have faith, or this will not work. Mary Lou tensed up inside. Trust, absolute trust, in anyone was hard, even with her best friend. She still struggled with her skin crawling with objection when any guy was too close. Her scars from abuse trauma were invisible, and she wanted to be rid of them. Yet they were there. She considered for several long moments. If there was anyone she trusted, it was Kenneth. What do I have to do? Skuld watched the girl closely. She could see her soul searching and didn't miss when her spirit shifted to acceptance. Mary Lou's soul knew who she was, and who he was, even if her conscious mind did not. Fate knew she wouldn't refuse even as she gave her a choice. But she also knew success wasn't guaranteed. It all hedged on memories and how deep the girl could dig into herself. Quietly, Skuld sat briefly on a bale of hay. With the tapestry laid in her lap, she searched carefully and found a blue thread with its end protruding out and a gold thread nearby. Without tying the threads together, she intertwined them and wove them back into the weaving side by side, where together they appeared forest green. There, Fate's voice was tinged with satisfaction. That should do it. The tapestry shimmered and shifted colors on the dark background common to Fate's weaving. It was as if the characters depicted there moved against the night sky. Where Skuld hung it on the beam between saddles, it glowed silver and provided additional light in the grayness of the afternoon thunderstorm. It depicted a huge black horse and a small boy standing in front of it with his hand outstretched. The beauty of the weave and the black horse captured Mary Lou. She followed its outline with her eyes as if she were trying to draw the equine. She committed it to memory so she could paint the depiction later on paper. Thunder outside heralded Odin's arrival back in the barn. He stepped up silently to Skuld in contrast with his arrival a few days earlier. He winked at Kenneth, who noticed Odin now wore dark gray riding leathers and carried a spear of his own. Odin laid his hand on Skuld's shoulder, and they watched Mary Lou be drawn in by the magic of the tapestry. You must remember, Skuld told her urgently. Draw it around you, like a second skin. You have forgotten because you must live your life free of the past, but it is still you. No one can take away who you are. You must claim your right to your name and let that part of your soul free. Can I touch it? Mary Lou felt as if she was beginning to float, and reality shifted as she was drawn to the tapestry. No, Kenneth voiced his rising foreboding. Don't touch it. Remember what happened to your sister Carly when Skuld gave her the necklace? He quickly stepped forward, intending to pull his friend away. He could sense a prickle of electricity in the air that he knew was more than the electrical storm outside. With all due respect, Lord Odin, whatever you're about to do to her, is this really necessary? He couldn't understand his rising panic and struggled to damp it down and distance himself from whatever was causing it. Odin motioned him away. I understand your feelings, but this is her first test. Yours comes after, he said grimly. I advise you to back away. Kenneth refused. He forced himself to stand beside Mary Lou and look at the tapestry. It caused echoes within him, too, that he couldn't put his finger on. It's okay, Ken. Mary Lou said softly. She turned to look at him and he recoiled, startled. One of her eyes had turned dark, while the other was pale, nearly blue-white. His intake of breath drew a sad smile from his friend. "It's okay. Just me." Mary Lou reached out and laid her hand on the horse. She brightened, so bright he could no longer bear to look at her. Kenneth finally did as Odin bade him and began to back away. He felt as if he'd suddenly plugged himself into an electric current. He was pushed back and found himself approaching the open end of the barn. He stopped. He wouldn't leave her, not knowing what was happening. He planted his feet stubbornly in determination and rising anger. As Mary Lou was immersed in the magic, she felt her perspective twist and spin. When she touched the horse, he touched her, and she saw herself laid bare as lifetimes she had lived flashed before her eyes. For a moment she recoiled, and then she touched the center of the horse, felt his rage, his hate, heard him bellowing and the sound of metal clashing on metal, the screams of the dying. She shook her head and knew those were the echoes of the past. Going deeper, the girl allowed herself to feel the rage wash over her, and she shifted in mind and body while the hunger of a predator filled her with an old, nearly forgotten familiarity. She could be magnificent again. Dangerous. No one would touch her. She screamed as she remembered everything. The daily struggle, the knives, the whips, the taste of blood in her mouth, the pain. But also the half-remembered touch of someone who cared managed to pierce the hate. She became all and let it flow freely. She found herself thrown backward out of the magic of the tapestry, transformed and screaming. But it was a new sound, deeper and challenging. Kenneth gasped as he watched his friend rear to full height, with nostrils flared and bugling her willingness to fight the other stallions. She dropped to 4 hooves and stood panting and snorting in disorientation as the evening lightened. The sun chose that moment to break through the clouds, and sunlight reflected on the glossy coat of the full-grown horse standing in front of Kenneth. A red tone highlighted the black hide, and a full mane and tail fell heavy. The horse had a large white star sliding over to the side, and his left eye was pale blue. The horse was also inexplicably and noticeably a massive stallion. "There is your mount," Scold smiled sweetly. "I think you will find that the saddle fits." Kenneth looked at Scold incredulously. He closed his open mouth with a snap, and his dark brown eyes turned nearly black. He breathed deeply to control his urge to snarl. "What the fuck did you just do to her?" he demanded. "Change her back, now!" "I cannot," Scold declared. "It is done. She has decided the skin that she wears. Bucephalus is who she is. Her service helped bring about the dawn of a new age, which neither she nor Alexander ever saw for themselves. It lasts even today in pockets of the Middle East and the enlightenment of history. I did not make her Bucephalus. She is Bucephalus. Will you honor her sacrifice and loyalty, or are you just going to stand there?" "Claim your horse," Odin commanded. "Her body looks different. He is now male on the outside, but the soul is the same. Bucephalus is yours to command, but best watch yourself there." Odin nodded at the horse. Kenneth turned his attention from the powers to his friend once more. He admired the easy play of sleek muscle and cat-like movement. Kenneth didn't enjoy riding as Mary Lou did, but he knew what a good horse looked like. Bucephalus in the flesh was simply breathtaking. The horse was still blowing with furiously flared nostrils, but sniffed the air, taking in the scents which were much richer to him as a stallion than a human girl. Everything smelled green and fresh. She could smell the human standing in front of him, and scented even the large red cat sardonically watching the goings-on from the rafters of the barn. However, the perspective of everything changed. Bucephalus could see to the sides and rear with an oddly split vision due to his eye placement on the sides of his head. Light and shadow had depth with odd overlays and underlays of energy. Kenneth took 2 steps forward with his hand outstretched, oddly mirroring the tapestry. Then, from the teen's perspective, all hell broke loose. Despite the still falling rain, the brief break in the clouds lit up the barn from the outside. The light caused Kenneth's shadow to fall long on the floor in front of him as he jumped back a step. He hadn't expected the furious scream as Bucephalus jumped to the side, eyeing the moving shadow on the barn floor. The horse snaked his head low with teeth bared and every muscle tensed. Kenneth moved again, and the stallion again jumped to the side. A furious sound that Kenneth didn't know a horse could make came from low in his throat. That sounded half like a growl, but much louder. Bucephalus plunged at him without warning, stomping the moving shadow on the ground and swinging around to kick him. "What the? Mary Lou, wake up!" Kenneth yelled as he dodged a flying hoof, and Bucephalus came at him with his teeth snapping shut with a loud clack as Kenneth barely managed to avoid a vicious bite. The big horse reared and attempted to come down on top of Kenneth with slashing front hooves, and he barely rolled out of the way in time. "God damn it, are you trying to kill me?" He found himself trapped against the barn wall as a back hoof came at him, and he ducked again. Kenneth's quick fighter reflexes saved him from having his skull caved in by the kick. Kenneth realized he was trapped with not enough room to maneuver in the barn and backed away toward the outside. The front of his shadow moving made Bucephalus leap backward and then come at him again. "Why's she doing this?" Kenneth demanded. "She's gone crazy." "She's a stallion, boy. You're going to have to prove yourself." Odin chuckled deeply. "It's not funny," Kenneth yelled back. But Odin's answer finally penetrated, and he started thinking rather than reacting. He observed the horse's movements. Bucephalus's ears were plastered back against his skull. There was no light of intelligence left in his friend's eyes, only anger and maybe a flicker of fear. He began to ask himself why. He tried to remember the little he'd read about Alexander's horse. The shadows, he recalled. Alexander turned him away from his shadow. Kenneth watched Bucephalus repeatedly jump at the long shadows on the ground. He backed out of the barn into the rain with the horse following, stalking stiff-legged, practically on his toes. The horse's ears were flat, and he kept shaking his head. The stallion plunged at him again. Kenneth rolled underneath the railing on the arena's edge, barely out of reach. In response, Bucephalus rose to the height of a full rear just over the top of Kenneth, and held himself there for a long moment, pawing the air. The horse was practically directly over the top of him. The rain falling on the horse's face looked like the very tears of the gods. When he saw the underside of the magnificent animal up close, the drama of the thought combined with the roadmap appearance of raised scars covering the horse's belly made him draw his breath in shock. "Oh my God!" Kenneth quickly got to his feet on the other side of the protective railing and stared with new eyes at his friend. His gaze took in every detail of the horse in front of him. "Okay," he thought, "she's a horse. At least for the time being. We will deal with what we've got here. I'll kick your ass later." He spat and glared at the stallion, who snorted at him. The horse slung his head, tossed his mane, and galloped to the other side of the paddock. Bucephalus reached down and started tearing off mouthfuls of wet grass. The rain, which fell more lightly, now made his coat glisten. "Where did all those horrible scars come from?" Kenneth asked Odin as he joined him by the rail. "He doesn't have those on his back or sides, so those can't all be battle wounds. I thought Alexander took care of him." "He did," Odin said simply. "Bucephalus was 13 summers in age when Alexander won him with fearless respect and a firm hand. They were a year apart in age, the horse being slightly older. Then, I see. Kenneth realized what he was looking at. That explains a lot, he said thoughtfully. All right, then, he told Odin. I can handle this. Kenneth walked around the outside of the railing, maneuvering himself to where he could approach from the side. He eyed the clouds in case the sun broke through again. He was mindful of the distraction of the moving shadows, reminding his friend of some past trauma. They could set him off again before he could get close enough to touch his mind. Marilou? Kenneth began, then hesitated. Bucephalus, he called gently. The stallion turned his head toward him and took an involuntary step toward the sound of a familiar, soothing voice. Kenneth threw caution to the wind and entered the arena with the horse again. When he drew close, this time, the horse didn't move. His ears came up as Kenneth approached, talking softly but with command. When he drew close, however, Bucephalus's ears went flat again, and his skin shook as if flies were biting. But nothing was there. He tensed up, and Kenneth eyed the bared teeth. Up close, Kenneth could see the ropey scars around the horse's mouth and lips, whitish gray colored against the night-black, tender flesh of the stallion's muzzle. What did some asshole do to you? Kenneth whispered. He projected the question to the horse mentally. Kenneth received a mental image of a spiked ball in Bucephalus's mouth and fishhooks in the tender skin, holding his mouth closed with blood dripping. It flecked his neck and front legs in red. As the horse trembled in front of him, mind touched, he could see the whips, the blade wielded by a cruel hand in the delicate portions of his chest, belly, and legs as the horse fought his restraints until white foamy sweat coated his body. He saw the curved blade driven up into the horse's mouth from beneath his jaw. All of it was carefully calculated to cause pain, but never in a place that would spoil the horse's magnificent beauty. Kenneth saw the memory of raw wounds on the angry stallion as the sun shone on his paddock at an angle in the late afternoon. He watched the long shadows approach from behind as they did every day when the abuse began. The horse took hold of his tormentor. Bucephalus crushed flesh and bone to rip the cruel man's arm from its socket. In his mind's eye, Kenneth saw the quick sale and the hushed transaction as the man's wife sold the horse to a trader who then brought him to the king of Macedonia, where Alexander found him. Oxhead, Kenneth whispered. That's what your name means. Bucephalus. Stubborn. You never quit fighting. Then you carried a king across most of the known world and changed history. He stepped forward with purpose and slid his hand gently across his friend's muzzle, feeling the scars. These no longer show on the surface when you are a human, Kenneth observed. But you still have them, and they still hurt, don't they? And you mostly don't remember how you got them, except you still shy away from contact, never realizing that this life's harm is not all that sits on your soul. You are correct, Odin told him from the rail. If you want more than a horse now that she's locked into this portion of herself, you need to draw her mind back to the surface. At this moment, for all intents and purposes, she is only a horse. But you are going to need more of her than that for your task. You are the only one who can do this for her. Then you will have both Mary Lou, your friend, and your warhorse. Odin fell silent again. He allowed Kenneth to figure the rest out. Bucephalus was calm now that Kenneth gentled him with his hands and voice. Only a horse. No, you were never just a horse, he told the stallion. He pushed the hair off Bucephalus's forehead and rubbed his white spot. Now, you've taken enough of a vacation. It's time to come back. Come on. I can't do this without you. We got somewhere to ride, girl, and you got to help me save the world. He told the stallion, I'll be with you the whole way. Kenneth felt the tension leave Bucephalus as he laid his head along the horse's jaw for several minutes, projecting into Mary Lou's mind, past the stallion Bucephalus, drawing her out as he had done during meditation. That's better, he said gently. Now, if you are ready to lead the way to the barn. He gestured to the open door of the barn behind him. Scold says that saddle will fit. I don't relish trying to stick with you bareback. Bucephalus snorted at him. A bright intelligence was back in the horse's eyes. Instead of following, Bucephalus dropped heavily to the ground, looked at Kenneth expectantly, and then at his own back. Are you kidding me? Kenneth almost laughed at the contrast. You were trying to kill me half an hour ago. Don't think I won't kick your ass later. He considered briefly, shrugged, and threw a leg over the horse's back. Might as well get this over with, bareback or not. He gritted his teeth as Bucephalus rocked back and then forward to be able to rise. Easy now, Kenneth said as he settled himself just behind the stallion's withers. He slid slightly on the wet hair of his horse's back and adjusted position to grip with his legs. It was a seamless fit. Once on Bucephalus's back, Kenneth realized how tall the horse truly was. He wove his fingers into the thick black mane. All right, then. Let's see what you've got. He gently nudged the horse into a long, striding walk, getting the feel of how the horse moved beneath him. Are you going to jaw my teeth out at a trot? Kenneth asked, and then grinned as the stallion squealed, but broke into a ground-covering two-beat gait. It felt free and easy. The forward propulsion was smooth rather than bouncy. Don't you dare buck me off, Kenneth said, and dug his heels in. He got an instant response. His horse practically coiled into a tuck underneath him. It felt like a spring releasing as Bucephalus came off his powerful hindquarters in a dead gallop. Kenneth's brief surprise turned to excitement at the speed and feel of the powerhouse beneath him. Yeah! He shouted. He forgot he didn't have a saddle, forgot the rein, and forgot Skuld and Odin were waiting as he pointed Bucephalus at the fence. He guided him with his hands, which were wrapped in hair. Hell yeah! He mentally calculated his horse's speed and distance and knew the stallion could make it over the rails. Let's go! They sailed over the fence and kept going. The teen settled with the long stride and marveled at how easily they moved together. He shifted his weight slightly, and the stallion shifted under him, keeping him balanced. Light leg pressure or a gentle touch on the neck was all it took for Bucephalus to respond to direction. If he sat back and down slightly, the horse slowed or stopped. It felt like they had been doing this forever. They stopped in the middle of an expansive pasture with his horse barely breathing hard. Kenneth lay forward on the stallion's back and put his arms around the heavily maned neck. That was awesome, Kenneth grinned into the horse's thick hair. Maybe we should just keep you a horse, so you don't get winded with asthma. Bucephalus snaked his head sideways and nipped at his leg, and Kenneth tapped him on the nose with his toe. None of that, he told him. I was kidding. It was a joke. The stallion snorted, and Kenneth laughed. I wonder how you would do running barrels, Kenneth mused on their way back to the barn. In response, Bucephalus crow-hopped, nearly unseating him. What? You wouldn't want to pit yourself against the immortal bloodwine and a stopwatch? Kenneth laughed, and Bucephalus squealed. Guess not, he grinned. You're the one that asks me all the time, where's my sense of adventure? When they finally arrived at the barn, Skuld handed Kenneth a bucket. Fetch your horse some water. There's a water source outside. I'm getting his food, and you will need to feed him. We have a hard ride ahead of us. When we leave, all you will have is whatever you can carry with you. Your mount needs sustenance. Skuld indicated 2 more buckets and lined up against the wall. He will be expending a great deal of energy following the hounds, and not only has to carry you, but may have to fight as well. Can she do this? Kenneth asked Skuld when he returned with a bucket sloshing water. She's not bloodwine or icewing to be able to... He trailed off, looking at the other stallions. Bucephalus is not only your mount, he is an extra weapon, and will fight to the death to protect you. He was nearly 30 when he died and made it through countless battles with Alexander of Macedonia, who led his forces from the front. Your best and your only chance to make it through the veil and back in one piece is on the back of Bucephalus. This was not an accident, was it? Kenneth asked Skuld. You are fate. You know things before they happen. The fact that we met at all had a purpose. I have indeed known all along who she is, but both of you still have free will, and so not everything is predetermined. However, putting the two of you together ensures that the choice can be made. You are both warriors of a rare breed, Skuld assured him. But I will warn you that once she returns and becomes the Mary Lou you know in this lifetime, she may well not remember any of this. You will know. She may not, simply because of the physical form she is wearing. Skuld shook her head. If she does remember, however, to give her peace afterward, we can offer her some lethe. Lethe? I've never heard of that. Kenneth frowned and thought. The water of forgetting, Skuld answered him. The Lord of the Dead offers the drink to those who must return to earthly life so that they can start life anew without the trappings of past lives and accumulated trauma. Then, why do I have some memories? Kenneth asked her. I can see snippets of myself here and there. Greece, Egypt, Rome, sometimes a man in a fighter, and sometimes as a woman. It is imperfect, Skuld answered him. The older and more advanced the soul, the more the memories stick around due to the lethe. It can also depend on how much you drink, how much you return after death, and if there is a purpose to remember a place, a time, another person, Skuld said. In your case, you are stronger than most, not only because you are an old soul, but because of who and what you are, and the fact that you were once trained as an oracle. Kenneth turned to look at Bucephalus, who was munching on the grain Skuld offered. What about, him? Has she been anybody else besides a famous horse? You have both lived many lives, some of them together. In some lives, you both had wealth and privilege, and in some lifetimes you did not, Skuld said. In some, there was war and conflict, and in others, peace. The two of you are always positioned to shape the events of conflict and change. But more than that, I cannot say because it is not time yet for you to know more. Your memories will have to provide the rest, but only when it is proper, and you are ready to deal with whatever those memories may show you. So, I'm running around with amnesia? Kenneth observed. Essentially, yes, Skuld answered. But your soul remembers, and you are still the same person, even when you are needed back on this earthly plane to do your job or settle past personal issues in another situation, place, time, and mortal shell. Yet you develop and evolve through each experience. Lethe allows you to start life with innocence. You cannot be held accountable for what you cannot remember. It also reduces the impact of past trauma. Their conversation was interrupted by a multitude of high yips and barks. The hounds have arrived, so you need to expedite, Skuld said. She continued talking as she returned to her tack room. Roxy gets impatient for the hunt. She will not wait on you once we get started. It's your responsibility to follow her and the pack and keep up. Here, when you finish saddling up, put these on. She dropped a large pack at Kenneth's feet when she returned. Skuld was robed in a crisp pay-gray leathers with gold banding. Her cloak billowed around her like a cloud, and a broadsword glittered at her hip. Because you are flesh and not just spirit, your scent will attract feeders, even though most of them will not attempt to grab you. If they touch a soul of light, it burns them the same as you putting your hand in a bonfire. Yet, some will try who find it worth the risk. Skuld said, your proximity to the Spear of Chaos has disguised your aura with taint. Also, the scent of evil around you from the spear will draw trouble. These will help protect you. When Skuld turned to saddle Icewing, Kenneth opened the bag. He caught his breath. This is worth a fortune, he whistled. Is this stuff for real? Yes, Skuld told him. That is Bucephalus's old equipment and Alexander's. The saddle is not, of course, since Alexander rode without a saddle, but you will need to keep your seat. Where you're going, you'll need to stick with your horse at all times. The armor is linothorax, made of white layered linen cloth used by the Greek and Macedonian armies. You should put that on over the leather pants and linen shirt you will find as additions to the bag. What about this? Kenneth held out the gold-colored bridle. I thought you said I don't need it. You don't. That equipment is your choice and his. Skuld nodded at his horse, who sniffed the braided bridle that was in his hand. The horse's ear tips nearly touched, and his eyes were wide as he snorted lightly. Well? Kenneth dropped the braided rope reins and held the bridle out to Bucephalus. The cheek piece joined on one side, where it knotted and hooked together without buckles. He wasn't sure what to do with extra straps and hooks. In response, Bucephalus nosed the braided bands until Kenneth turned it inside out, and what he thought was backwards. In response, the horse shoved his head through the strapping. With the bridle pulled out of Kenneth's hands and Bucephalus's lack of hands to put it on right, the whole thing slung around, forcing Kenneth to dodge again. The stallion gave up after several tosses of his head and gave Kenneth a reproachful look in response to his giggle. Here, would you like some help with that? Kenneth asked him, smiling. You look rather silly with it hanging half off your face. That will do. Skuld nodded as Kenneth fixed the straps on his still fidgeting stallion. The extra strap goes around his neck and connects to both the bridle and the breastband. It will give you an extra handhold, she told him helpfully. Yes, just like that. There's no bit. His mouth is left free of hardware so he can bite the enemy. Kenneth could hear the commotion of dogs outside and Odin bellowing when the high yips turned to a snarl. Ha, ha, ha! The shouting continued. He sped up the process of his preparations. He hurriedly picked up the linothorax armor and wrapped it around himself, tied it along the left side and then tying down the shoulder straps in front with their ties. The leather breeching fit snugly, but was loose enough that it would allow him to move freely. He found that the boots also fit. There was a belt, which he donned, and a few odds and ends that he placed in the packs attached to the back and sides of the saddle. Mounting up, Kenneth followed Icewing out of the barn to where Odin waited with the dogs. Upon seeing the big, reddish-brown stallion, the dog's pack leader stalked toward Kenneth and Bucephalus stiff-legged. Her head was low, with her hair raised along her spine. Her eyes glowed with an eerie blue-white light in the gathering dusk. Lord Odin? Kenneth questioned. He recognized the dog's aggressive stance. You are new to the hunt, Odin replied to Kenneth's unspoken question. You must introduce yourself without fear or prejudice, and she must accept your presence. Roxy, Odin commanded the dog. Packmate, hunting party. Bucephalus's ears were back. He blew at the dog and struck out in warning. Upon Roxy's answering growl, the horse bared his teeth, but his ears came up and he stepped forward. Kenneth realized that the dog wasn't a hound at all. She was black and tan in color, sleek in head and body like a Doberman, but with a long tail. She approached his mount with deliberation, and together Roxy and Bucephalus blew in one another's nostrils, sharing breath and sealing friendship. Kenneth reached down, snapping his fingers, and gently laid his hand on her head. Good. Now we hunt, Odin declared as Roxy's head came up and her tail wagged happily. The dogs gathered around their huntsman as he commanded them. Tonight it is not the souls of the damned we hunt. You must find the Spear of Destiny. The dogs milled around them. They were black and tan, light golden brown, black, brindle, and of assorted breeds. Kenneth wondered why they were called hounds. They were not what he'd envisioned for hounds of the wild hunt. He thought to ask later as the dogs set off at a run with Bucephalus moving in long, easy strides underneath him. All right,